This is the kind of guy who's got like Nazi memorabilia probably in his closet that shows people when they come over. You think it's reasonable to separate yourself from people based off the color of their skin? Are you
That's not what
insane?
he's doing.
It's the
White
same
people.
bullshit about drag shows in
No,
every
you're not doing
community,
this.
every
You
school,
gotta,
every
gotta listen.
library. It's
You gotta listen,
nonsense.
please.
Wait, where's the
Yeah,
problem with anti-white racism? I'm so confused.
I think you're confused about a lot of things. Like, all right, so
See,
you're gonna lean on your
tier
experience,
one
right?
sub
Knocking
to
doors,
Senate.
touching grass, etc. I'm gonna lean on my experience as a Discord mod.
Like you
Yeah,
gotta give her
I'm
the
sorry. I'm
motivation.
sorry. Was that painful to hear? Like,
No,
It
it
was
was cringe.
stupid.
Right, okay. People don't like long intros and shit like that, okay? So we're going to just do it like this. We're going to get straight into it as best we can. But I do just want everyone just a chance to, like, in 2 or 3 sentences, lay out roughly what their position is, okay? We can shill all your stuff after we finish in, like, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours tops. So, Brianna, I'll start with you. What's your position on all this Scott Adams business?
Sure. A conservative polling company ran a giant truck down the street, and a bunch of angry people, including Scott Adams, fell for it and chased it down the street. And Scott Adams chased the car, caught the car he was chasing, and is damaged because of it. That's my take.
Okay. Double Shine, what do you think?
Yeah, there's a saying, fuck around and find out. And that's exactly what Scott Adams did. He said some pretty racist shit, and he went on for like 20 minutes just saying some crazy stuff. And, the companies have every right not to, platform his work anymore.
Oh, boy. Sick.
yeah, I guess I'm more curious if people actually think he's a racist because I think he said questionable things. I think he tried to not own up to what he actually said and play it off as if he was talking about class issues. He was not. He very explicitly was talking about black people. But I think to a lot of people, it probably comes off as like this far right dog whistle. I don't think he's racist in the way people probably imagine. It just seems like he's spiteful of the current day climate surrounding politics and racial issues.
Okay. And Doobie.
Yeah, I think his position is totally reasonable. I think that if he believed that the poll is accurate, and that almost 50% of Black people either are not sure or don't think or that it's okay to be a white person, right? Or they disagree with the phrase "it's okay to be white," which implies they don't think it's okay to be a white person. Um, then I think a white person hearing that, I think would be totally justified in saying, "Hey, I just want to avoid black people from now on. I feel like this group doesn't like me, so I'm just going to avoid that group." And I think if any other group were to say, "Hey, if half of white people fucking hate me, right, or don't like me, or don't think it's okay to be like me, I'm just going to avoid white people." I think anybody else would saying that would be seen as totally reasonable, and I think he's reasonable for saying this. I don't think anything he said in this video was racist. I think he generalized a bit based on these poll results, which are the result of like 1,000 people. And I think like only 130 of those people were black anyway. So a very, very small group of people, right, that we're actually talking about here. So generalizing based off this poll is kind of silly. But given that I can accept that he doesn't understand how polls work, and I can accept that if he believed this was an actual real opinion that most black people have, he'd want to avoid them. I think it's fine.
Okay, cool. IRI's going to be joining us shortly. But yeah, go ahead. Hop into it.
Can I just state something about the poll? Yeah, only 20% of the black people in the poll actually said that it was wrong to identify as white. And the poll had 130 people. If you do the math, or 130 black people, if you do the math, he's generalizing an entire nation based off of 26 people.
Yeah, but we do this all the time, though, right?
Yeah, I'm
with
just
other
saying,
polls.
that's why I think people should take polls less seriously.
Yeah,
is
right.
because you can draw very toxic conclusions, for sure.
Yeah, I
also
can agree
to
with
be
that. And I don't think there's anything else in his statement or any of his behavior previously that I'm aware of that I've been able to find in doing research for this that indicates to me that he's a racist at all. It seems more like he's someone who saw himself for a long time as an ally of black rights, an ally of black people, and he felt betrayed. He felt like he was being tossed aside when he looked at this poll, and he saw that the result of all his life's work trying to help black people in his community, supporting black issues, that the result of that was he's going to be called a racist and he's going to be hated by half the group, right? So I think he just felt betrayed.
So
I think it's really important to note, though, this is not anything different than what he's been saying since the 1990s. I used to be a huge Dilbert fan, like when the dot-com boom was going on in the 90s. This is when I started my tech career, right? Dilbert was the hotness. I've read every single one of his books through 2005, especially his nonfiction books. He's been talking about this exact same sentiment for literally almost 30 years, right? I think the difference this time is he wasn't saying it in a way where it was couched in plausible deniability, right? Like he's been railing against what we used to call affirmative action since literally the 90s. And I think this time he expressed these things in a way that it really forced his syndicator's hand, right? Chud, you said something I hope I can share in our DMs. It's like if you're in the business of provocation, and you just keep poking that bear and saying stuff to get a rise out of people, which, let's be honest, he's a cartoonist. He loves doing that. That's always been his shtick. He did it back in he used to be corporate culture and the pointy-haired boss, and today it's SJWs. Let's just be honest. And, he did it in such a way, just poking and poking and poking, that he really forced people to respond to it. So, just one more quick thing. If you listened what he himself said in interviews afterwards with a YouTuber named Hotep Jesus, who's a Black conservative commentator, he himself told him he was 65. He had all the money he wanted. It was his goal to eventually blow up Dilbert in a way that with his controversies. And he said he finally got what he was looking for. So, I think we can have a nuanced discussion about what this poll means. But I think it's really important to just state the person who thinks Scott Adams deserved this is Scott Adams.
So that's a very nuanced perspective, which is excellent.
Sorry.
But no, that's fine. I want to throw it over to IRI who's just joined us. IRI, what's your perspective on this Scott Adams stuff, and also cam up if you can. I think you're muted. Mate. We can't hear you. Could be a Discord.
Is his mic frozen too? I mean, Cam.
Don't worry, you'll be back in a sec. Double Shine, I'll show it over to you because you seem a bit more forthright on your perspective on this. What are your thoughts on Doobie's takes?
Yeah, so I think it's like really easy. I already disagree that if you're like a public figure, which he absolutely is, he has a very, very large public following. If you're going to misrepresent a poll like this, I think you should already be held responsible. But to me, really, the most damning thing was the things that he said, where he doubled down on his comments afterwards. He hasn't like apologized for anything he says. And as Brianna said, I think anybody who's known about this guy knew that this is going to happen eventually. Even he seemed pretty unsurprised by it, and I think he's like made references that he knows that he's going to get canceled eventually for some of the crazy shit he says.
Wait, so you said earlier that he was like he was racist, right? Like he said racist things in the original stream. What were the racist things he said?
Yeah, so I took a couple quotes. Again, these are quotes. Please don't attribute them to me. So he calls Black Americans, that's a hate group, and I don't want to have anything to do with them. Based on the current way things are going, the best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people. Just get the fuck away, because there's no fixing this. This can't be fixed. This can't be fixed. You just have to escape.
Okay, which part of that was racist?
So I think labeling Black Americans as a racist hate group, I would consider that to be pretty racist.
Would you change your mind if you thought the poll was accurate, that almost half of Black Americans disagree with the phrase "it's okay to be white," and that they don't think it's okay to be a white person in the United States?
So first off, the poll is not accurate. So I don't even.
I understand.
That doesn't really make sense.
If you thought the poll was accurate, and you believed that half of a certain population group absolutely either thought it was not okay to be a white person, or they weren't sure if it's okay to be a white person, which is also strange. If you thought that's what this poll proved, right? Would you have as much of an issue with him saying, "Hey, if half this group hates me, that's a hate group"?
Yeah, I think I would still have an issue with him generalizing the entire Black Americans and stuff. And again, I think it's a little silly to be so reductive and say like, oh yeah, he can just make any prescription he wants based off a misunderstanding of a poll, which is like a pretty obvious racist
I think
sentiment.
you can,
Can I
I
add
think you can offer him
something?
a tiny bit of charity, right? Like again,
Like,
nothing.
I can offer him charity, but the fact that he's been doubling down on the comments, even though
He
he's been
hasn't.
told, yes, he has. He
No,
absolutely
he hasn't. In
has.
fact, he specifically said he's not talking about all Black Americans. He was speaking specifically about these people, and yes, he admitted that he was hyperbolic, right, in the original stream, right, when he said, "Oh, that's a hate group." He said that was hyperbole, right? That he doesn't mean every individual
Can I
Black
add
person.
something to that point? So,
You can do,
look,
but
we're-
let me get Orion first because he's
please,
now
please.
with us. Sorry. All
ahead.
right, go.
Okay, am I here?
Yes.
You guys can hear me? You see me?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't know what's been said so far, but this poll was 1,000 people, and only Black people were supposed to, or not only Black people, but the stat that got everybody outraged was the Black people, 26% of them in the poll answering, saying they're uncomfortable with the statement or they don't approve of the statement. It's okay to be white. So we're talking about like 130 people here. 13% of America's Black people out of 1,000, and then 26% of that. So like 30 people set this guy off on a rampage about how get away from Black people, but individual Black people are okay. It makes no sense. This guy was looking for a reason to pop off. This is the kind of guy who's got like Nazi memorabilia probably in his closet that shows people when they come over. Scumbag like this. Fuck Scott Adams.
That's
Wow.
okay.
Yeah,
I think it's
I
pretty
would-
obvious that everything you just said was ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Why is it
this
ridiculous,
kind of
Doobie?
conspiratorial
Why-
thinking.
wait,
first
why
stuff
is
you
it
guys are doing,
ridiculous?
Some of you guys
What's
are saying, oh, well,
ridiculous?
he was
No, no, no.
planning. He was
What's
planning. I'm gonna get
ridiculous?
there. I'm gonna get there. Shut the fuck up for a second. So the kind of conspiratorial thinking some of you guys are doing, say, oh, he was planning to do this the entire time, and maybe he was just like kind of like biting at the bear to see how far he could get before he blew up, right? Before the Dilbert blew up. So that's stupid, right? I don't think there's any
He
evidence.
was looking
of that
for
at
an
all.
excuse.
Secondly,
No,
okay,
listen,
this
Doobie,
thing that you just said is
blow up
stupid.
like he did,
So this
unless
idea,
you
this
had
idea,
extra
this
weight on it.
idea that he has like Nazi
You
memorabilia.
can call
in
it
his closet
stupid
and
all
shit
you
like this.
want.
And you're going to take this from him being upset that a group of people that he's dedicated a lot of his time and resources is trying to help.
Oh, what
that
did he do,
believes-
Doobie?
that He
What did he
believes
do that's
he
so
believes
wonderful
that
for
half
the
of
Black
these people
community?
hate him for his skin color, and so he wants to separate himself from these people. I think it's totally reasonable. I don't know
You
how
think
you
it's
get from there
reasonable?
to having Nazi memorabilia in your closet.
Wait. You think it's reasonable to separate yourself from people based off the color of their skin? Are you fucking
That's
insane?
not what he's doing. That's not what he's doing.
Well,
That's what he
Right?
is
He
saying.
said clearly,
Well, wait, you could-
if these people hate me because I'm white, right? Yeah, I want to stay away from them. I'm going to avoid them. Their problems aren't my problems anymore. I'm just going
Who
to stay
hates
away.
him? So how do you draw a conclusion they
So
hate
if this
him
poll were
because they're comfortable
accurate-
with the statement
if your
it's
poll were
okay to be
accurate-
white,
if the poll
which
were
they know
accurate-
is racist
Oh
as
my
fuck.
God.
That statement is no better than saying
okay, why
white
is that
power,
racist as fuck?
White lives matter. All
It's
that.
okay to be white is just like white power to you.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
yes,
when
the
David
black
Duke of
people,
the
they should
KKK is
know
saying
this.
it's
That's,
okay to
that's
be
actually
white.
ridiculous.
Hold on,
That's the
hold on.
dumbest shit I've
for
ever
one
heard in my life.
second. Hold on for 1 second.
Oh,
Let
come
me just
on.
add something. Let me add something really quickly here. Look, we are all in the know. We're probably all too extremely online. We all know what the origin of "it's okay to be white" is. Okay, right? We know
Yes.
it's a 4chan op. We know it's a loaded phrase. We know it is a racist dog whistle. And you know what? In my estimation, most Black people I know are smart enough to tell that. And I would suspect that this poll is measuring their estimation of this just basically being a troll. It's an op. It's a dog whistle, right? I think if you asked a more valid polling question, I think you'd come to a very, very different result, right? Like that's my objection with Rasmussen polling, which I'm sorry, y'all, this is a conservative outlet. It just is. Their polls always skew one way. I'm a political professional. I work with this stuff all the time. Like it's just what they're in the business of doing. So this is my statement to you. If you want to go out and do a new poll with some new questioning that's more neutral to get at the issues at hand here, I'm on board with that. I think it's an interesting question to ask, like in the aftermath of BLM and police brutality and all these things. What is the level of comfort that the Black community has with white people? I would be interested to know that, but I would posit to you that this individual poll doesn't tell you anything because it's bad polling.
Yeah, and to be honest, Brianna, you're right. And like, obviously, this poll is very limited. It's being presented by a biased source. I don't really have a lot of faith in surveys anyways, but everybody keeps bringing up the scope of what the survey is, how many Black people are on there. I think that's important to understand the survey itself, but you're not battling the survey. You're battling Scott Adams' interpretation of the survey and what he thinks how it maps onto reality.
Right.
So
Yeah,
even
so I
if
think-
even if you think the survey is bullshit, it doesn't really matter because Scott Adams has an opinion that within his interpretation it maps onto reality anyways. Like it doesn't matter if
Dude.
it's 30 black people.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm asking you to do is
26%.
extend a tiny bit. I understand, right? This a small group of black people. I know maybe you missed the intros, but I brought this up in the intro. This is a very small group of black people in this poll, right? I think it was like 130 total, and then only like 20-something% said no, and then like another 20% said they're not sure. So a tiny group of people, not representative of all black people in the United States, obviously, right? But understanding that, right? If we extend him a tiny bit of charitability, right? Understand that he's not just looking for a way to be mean to black people, that he actually believes this poll is reliable, that it represents some kind of reality in the country that he's living in, right? Then I can see why he'd be upset about this. And I think pretending that this poll is happening in a vacuum, right? In a country where we don't have a casual racism toward white people being broadly accepted by people on the left, by people in the mainstream media all the fucking time, is just I feel like it's disingenuous, right? I think we need to
Can you even be racist towards white
poll-
people, though? That's the big question we need to answer here.
I think
I
according to the
obviously,
poll,
yes.
the poll even
Listen,
said that a
you-
lot of black people can be racist. So you didn't mention that part because you only focused on the 50 black Americans that said it's not okay to be white. Which, by the way, they didn't even say it's not okay to be white. They just said that they weren't sure if they agree with that statement, which I think is very different than saying it's not
Well,
okay to be white.
For
It was
those
both.
50%, right? Yeah. It was both.
I mean, if
But
someone,
just to be
Okay,
clear, they
but
said they
again,
disagree with the statement. I think a lot of black people would also disagree with the statement "White Lives Matter" because they know that there's a little bit more going on there
okay,
than
but you're
just the
extending
literal
you're
words.
extending charity that
Wait.
I don't think you'd extend to your political opponents, right?
It's
So if we had
okay
a
to be
poll
black?
that said if we had exactly, so if we had a poll that said, do you disagree or do you disagree or agree with the statement it's okay to be black or Black Lives Matter? And half of white Americans responding to that poll said no. You would say, oh, these fucking racists. These are like KKK members. Half of the white people hate black people in the United States.
Good
Right?
point,
So
Doobie.
you're extending charity here to the other side that you don't extend to your political opponents. And I think if we're going to talk about this, you need to be honest about that.
No, I actually totally disagree. I actually saw a really good article. I think it was from Nate Silver of 538, who said, like, you shouldn't be using things like Black Lives Matter, because if you ask people what their opinion on Black Lives Matter is, I don't know if you're talking about the literal phrase or the organization, because a lot of people have issues with the organization Black Lives Matter, that they might be
No,
a lot more
That's not
amicable
what
towards
that's
the
not what it
movement.
was though. It was, do you agree with this phrase or do you agree with this statement? Or how
Sure,
much
and
do
if
you
I
agree
asked you,
with
do you
this
agree with the statement "white pride" or something like that? I think a lot of people would be like, "Wait, hold on, I'm not sure what you mean when
Okay,
you're asking me
hold
that
on.
That's
question."
not
No,
white pride. That's not white pride.
Yeah, it's not.
I
Again,
think
if
I think is it okay to be
double
white
check,
is on
double
the
check,
same level
double
as
check.
white pride.
No, that's stupid. First of all,
It
Let's double check.
absolutely
If we had-
is.
if
You
we
have
had-
people
if
from
we
the
had a-
Why?
KKK
we
tweeting
had a
it. How is it
poll
any
Why are
different?
you saying that,
on
Doobie?
how much do
Why-
you agree, or how much do you agree with the statement? It's okay to be black, or no, not even that, because I guess that's not like a thing that exists in the ecosystem, right? So Black Lives Matter. How much do you agree with the statement Black Lives Matter? And half of people responding to that said, white people specifically said either no or they're not sure. Right? Are you seriously telling me that you wouldn't look at the white people that said no and be like, oh shit, these people are fucking racist. They don't think Black Lives Matter.
Well, again, I would take issue with the poll entirely because, again, asking people what they think about Black Lives Matter doesn't actually tell me anything. I don't know what they're responding to there.
Okay, that's all very, you're very nuanced, right? And Brianna, you're obviously very nuanced too. But I'm pretty sure IRI, if there was a poll that came out that said conservatives, X amount, Black Lives Matter, whatever, you'd be sawing out about it on your stream. Let's be honest. You'd be calling them racist. You hate conservatives,
no,
don't
I
you?
wouldn't. No, I wouldn't, because Black Lives Matter has a negative connotation to some people, just like it's okay to be white. That it has a meaning. There's context to it as well. And there's some people out there that think BLM, Black Lives Matter, has been hijacked by extremists, and they don't like it, and they think it's a bad group. So I wouldn't soy out
Well,
about that.
Well, wait,
Right.
but, you're,
I-
So
but we're
because-
talking about the
because they're
nature of the
opposed
to the-
movement, not if it's
Because
been
they're opposed to the
co-opted, right?
movement or to the organization, they're opposed to the phrase Black Lives Matter, because that's what they were asked, right? How much do you agree with the
That's
statement?
what the question
it's okay to be
was.
white.
The state, it said
It
the
wasn't the
statement.
movement. It's okay to be white.
But they would associate it with it, just like
Wait,
black
but
people
as-
would hear it's okay to be white and would associate that with some racist fucks.
But
who
as
use
Brianna
it.
said
Normal
earlier-
white
as
people
Brianna
don't
said
use that
earlier-
statement.
Okay, as Brianna said earlier, we're like all online people, right? We all understand the context of this being like some kind of 4chan bait. Okay, why would we believe that the majority of Black Americans also understand that. The majority of Americans generally also understand that it's okay to be white is a 4chan racist dog whistle. Well, I
Well,
don't think
it
I don't think
sounds
we
like
should
a
assume that.
quarter. What you're assuming things too. It sounds like I could assume a quarter of the people that were black that took this poll are aware of it because they answered, I don't like that statement. I don't agree with it. I don't support it, I think is the actual question. Do you support the statement?
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Are you saying that I'm assuming that they are aware of it or that they're not aware of it?
You're assuming that they're not aware of it and they're taking it at face value. Am
No,
I
not true.
incorrect?
Okay, so my position is that this poll isn't representative of anything. It's useless, right? What I'm saying is that if we're going to be talking about his position, right, and the way that he reacted to this, we need to try to do it from understand his perspective, right? Maybe he's not aware of the "it's okay to be white" dog whistle. Maybe he doesn't agree that it's a dog whistle because there are plenty of conservatives who don't think it's a dog whistle. They believe that the media overreaction was the problem, right? That they believe that people reacting the way they did to someone saying it's okay to be white, that's the issue. Right, so he might not even think it's a dog whistle. So him looking at this poll, and let's say he's not very good at statistics, so he doesn't understand how polls work or whatever. And him thinking, oh shit, this is representative of Black people in the United States. It's okay to be white isn't a dog whistle because it is okay to be white. It's fine to be a white person. So therefore, half of Black people in this country are either not sure or not okay with the phrase "it's okay to be white," so they don't like me. I'm a white person. They don't like me.
Yeah. Can I expand from what you're saying and ask a question I think is a lot more important here than what Scott Adams thinks? Look, the reality is for the Democratic Party, we are hemorrhaging white voters. Uneducated whites, we are absolutely hemorrhaging them. We are now the party of college educated elites with white collar jobs. Okay, that's just a fact. Despite what we may want the reality to be, it is accurate to say Scott Adams has a sentiment that is shared by a lot of white people in this country. Now, look, I'm very psychologically inclined to not be empathetic to that, but it's a reality and we've got to deal with it. So I think the bigger question here is, what do we do about all the Scott Adams out there? Because there are forces like this Rasmussen poll and Fox News. They're really, really skilled at revving them up on these cultural issues and spinning them off. And let's just be honest, it exists on the left just as much. I retweeted that landlords asking you to tip them video, and I knew it would get people angry, and I was not disappointed, right? We do it on the left just as much. But how do we answer for this in this country? How do we move forward? Because it feels to me like we are in a cultural stalemate where no one is going to win and no one is going to lose at this point.
Well,
I
don't
think we need to stop dismissing blatant racism directed toward white people, blatant generalizations directed toward white people,
Okay.
which
Well,
plenty of people on this channel are guilty of.
That's cute and all. I'm sure white people can handle a little pushback, but I don't think the answer is to get away from Black people in America. I mean, that is a ridiculous response. It's a childish, immature response. That's so un-American, man. Let's get away from them.
Infantilizing Black people? Do you think that Black people can't handle the phrase "all lives matter" in response to Black Lives Matter? You know, like a lot of this is just
you disagree with the concept of like Black safe spaces?
A lot of this is just speaking to the fact that there is some animosity towards white people among non-white races, and it's being noticed. People are talking about it, but every time it's ever talked about, it's like, well, that's cute. I think white people can handle this. Like, well, can't fucking Black people handle it? Can't Latinos handle it? Like, honestly, fucking deal with it.
Yeah, if we can understand,
I don't think that's something that I think that's something white liberals get upset about. I don't think it's something Black people get angry at that.
Yeah, of course, generalize and be racist.
I'm saying in my experience, like as a political professional, I think this is a good example of the kind of thing that white people really get upset about because it's more of a cultural issue. What I've seen in Black communities is there's a pragmatism and honestly a real ability to put up with some bullshit that just spins, and white liberals spin.
You just did it. You're doing the thing right now. Stop. No, it's not. Stop. So you just did the thing, right? It's where you say, oh, white people are this way. And the racism thing, where you're being a racist.
Yes.
You generalize and say, oh, this is a white liberal thing. They're not pragmatic. They're kind of delusional. They're looking for virtue points. Whereas Black people, they're pragmatic. They're practical. They can put up with some shit. It's ridiculous. ridiculous. There are plenty of examples of black people, black and brown
Wait,
people,
do-
demanding safe spaces so they can be away from the racial animus that they feel from white people, right? Even when it's not there.
I wonder if there's a misunderstanding, because I think what the point Brown was making was that white liberals have a tendency to be offended on behalf of black people. over
Yes,
this,
thank
right?
you, Chud.
Do you
That's
deny
it
that's
exactly.
do you deny
Okay.
that's the thing that happens, do you?
I think it's a thing that happens, but I think another thing that happens is the infantilizing of black people, right? And also the covering for black people. People dismiss anti-white racism when it's coming from black and brown people. They pretend it's not a real thing, or they pretend these white people are just fragile, or these white people are just they can handle a little bit of pushback, a little bit of racism. It's fine, right? It's dismissed. It's not a big fucking deal because it's coming
What is
from
the
the victims,
racism?
quote unquote.
What is the racism? Some harsh words once in a while? I don't understand. While others
people
live
being
under
beat up in the
systemic
street.
racism.
People
Oh,
being
really?
Beat up in the street.
Beat up in the
people being
street? Is there
shot.
some sort of
Yeah.
really?
Th-
Is there? Are
come
you
on.
kidding me? Are you kidding me?
No, I'm
You're
not
telling
kidding
me
you.
that there is some.
Maybe-
You're telling me there's some scourge of white people being punched in the face randomly in the street? Are you kidding me? Where?
Did you
Where is
forget
any
the
of this
knockout game?
happening?
I don't
Hold
know.
on.
I don't know if
that
it's
is absolutely true. Hold on. To be super clear,
You're
like,
falling
what-
victim to the
white
same
people-
bullshit that Scott
white
Adams
people-
is. Just
white
watching
people-
videos
stop.
online.
No, listen.
It's
White
the same
people-
bullshit about drag shows in
No,
every
you're not doing
community,
this right.
every
Listen,
school,
you gotta
every
listen.
library. It's
You gotta listen,
nonsense.
please. White people are absolutely the victims of hate crimes. You agree with this, right?
Oh wow.
Racial hate
Okay,
crimes.
who
Yes.
cares?
Who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares that white people are the victims of hate crimes? It's fine because it's happening to a white person. Is this really your position?
Doobie,
No,
what's the point you're
it's-
trying to make? Just because white people are the
Dude,
victim
my
of hate
point is
crimes,
that racism
suddenly
is
everything
bad.
you just throw it off.
Racism is
Yeah,
bad no matter
racism
what
is
it's
bad.
directed
Fucking
at.
stupid, man.
Obviously, right?
This is
So
so
But even
stupid.
even the poll said like
What they do.
70% of black people agree that
Oh,
black
my
people
God.
can be racist. I don't know why you're making this
30% of
argument.
black
Nobody
people-
is
Okay,
nobody
Think
disagrees.
about that.
Nobody
Think about
here-
that. So 30%
nobody
of black
here is
people don't think
denying-
black people can be racist.
Look at
Is
you
that what
showing
you're
out
Nobody
about.
here
Yeah,
is
and a third
denying-
of white people disagree that it's okay to be white, but you don't care about that, do you? Or do you want to talk
Wait,
about
I
the
just
white
wanna
guilt
point out,
that white people
Nobody on
experience?
nobody on this panel has
True.
denied that racism against white people exists. They've just made excuses for why it's okay.
No, Scott Adams was literally saying on social media he sees a black person beating up a white person every
wait,
single
hold
day,
on.
and that's why we need to move away from them. I think if you're
on.
going to make those kind of
No,
prescriptions,
Double
it's a
Shine,
little bit more than just realizing the
you're not
descriptive reality
understanding.
that black people can be racist.
No, you're not understanding because this has been a theme of Scott Adams' work for a long time, right? Where he believes that the media pushes inflammatory videos out on their services of black people beating up white people, of white people being Karens or whatever the fuck, to create racial animus between the two groups, right? To create animosity, right? To further the divide. And he thinks that's a bad thing. So he says, hey, I'm tired of seeing videos of black people beating up white people. And in that statement that you just like semi-quoted, he said flat out, I understand this is anecdotal. I understand this is not representative of reality or the real situation on the ground, but this is what they're showing us 24/7 on these fucking platforms, and I'm tired of it. Right? Because he thinks that these videos are fueling racism against black people. And he thinks that
Wait,
black
so
people
do you
should be
think
upset
he's
about
calling out the media, or do you think he's calling out
Yes.
black people? Oh my god,
No,
you're
hold-
delusional, Doobie. He's
that.
absolutely calling out black
Did
people.
you not watch the fucking video you just quoted? Like, did you
Yes,
just,
I watched the whole thing. I took quotes of it. He absolutely did not
Okay,
call
then you
out the
then you're
media
lying then.
for showing these videos. No, he was calling out
absolutely
black
did.
people. No, because later he goes on. I think in 2 days later he said that there's a distinct problem with young black men. For some reason, he doesn't want to speculate, but that they're significantly more violent. And goddamn,
You
he was
think
so
that's not
close
true?
to race realism. It
Hold on, do you
absolutely is. But again,
Oh,
you
so
can't-
it's true.
You can't add but you can't add prescriptions to that, because once you start adding prescriptions that we should stay away from black men, I think it's a little bit
Wait, hold
more
on,
than
think
just
about what you just
describing.
said. Think
So-
what you just said. Oh, he said there's some problem with young black men where they're more violent. And
This is
and
exactly
you
like
say this-
1350.
you say this-
1350 is a
you
real
say this-
statistic,
please
but when you
stop.
start
say
making
this- you
prescriptions
say
to
this
it, there's
as
a
if
little bit
it's-
more
as if-
going
as if
on
it's
there.
incorrect, or as if there's something wrong with saying this, but then you agree with it. Right. So what's going on here is you're being uncharitable. You're reading in shit to what he said that he didn't actually say. You're implying that he's a race realist for believing the same thing that you believe. Right, where
No,
he
I
said
agree with the
outright-
descriptive
Stop,
reality.
stop,
I
stop. So
disagree with the
in the original video, he says flat out, "Hey, the last advice I'm going to offer to the black community is focus on education. Our system allows it. If you focus on education, you'll do well. The white people do this, Asian people do this, Indian people do this. Focus on education and you'll do well. That's it. So he doesn't think that there's some genetic thing. I'm sure it seems he thinks the culture just isn't focused enough on education. So the fact that you would take this black crime statistic thing that he brought up, right, where the reality is, well, there's a lot of disproportionate crime in the United States committed by young black men. So the fact that you brought up that he mentioned that and then implied that this meant he's like a race realist is again just demonstrating to me that you're being totally uncharitable. You're reading and shit to what he said that he doesn't actually believe.
I'm not reading into shit. I'm literally quoting the prescriptions he's making about how we should get the fuck out of black neighborhoods. So yeah, I think I'm not just saying that like he's describing a descriptive reality.
Like,
again, if he had just brought up the poll, I think that probably would have been okay. Even if it was disingenuous.
When he mentioned getting out of black neighborhoods, who was he quoting?
I don't think he was. I think he was just saying that.
No, it was Don Lemon. He said specifically.
No.
Hey, Don Lemon said this when he was in a black neighborhood. When he moved to a white neighborhood, he had to deal with far less crime, far less violence.
And that's actually a misquote. Don Lemon said. Don Lemon said that black neighborhoods litter more. That's what Don Lemon said. So that was a complete misquote of Don Lemon. I looked it up. If you can find me the quote of Don Lemon saying that there's more crime in the black neighborhoods, please.
Okay, we can do that in a bit, but can you just agree that when he said the thing about moving out of black neighborhoods, right, he mentioned in that very same sentence that he was agreeing with Don Lemon, that Don Lemon said this, that when he moved to a white neighborhood, he had to deal with like less crime, less etc., less violence. So
I want to fact check.
So the fact that you would bring that up,
I'm going to say something
you would bring that up,
if you'll let someone else talk today. If you'll let someone else talk on this call today, that would be amazing.
Please.
Thank you. So I'm going to say something that two people are not going to like. First of all, when you're quoting Scott Adams talking about education for the communities, you're dead on. In a later video, he goes through 5 steps that you need to go through to be successful in life. And it was something he did in the video with Hotep Jesus. And he delineated some things I thought were fairly, I think it showed some real concern from an American to another American about how to have the best life. And I agree with you there. I think you were mischaracterizing his comments about Don Lemon. I just watched his video before that. That was not the thrust of his argument. In fact, he restated and doubled down on that position later in another video. So I don't agree with your summation there.
Well, I mean, couldn't you make the same argument about Scott Adams as he said some stuff like on its face that sounds pretty wild, but given context, the implications of it could be softened up. So like you might disagree with the characterization of the Don Lemon quote, but the fact is that it can be seen and interpreted as such in that isolated snippet.
Look, what I've said to you, and I'll repeat it right here. I think there are a lot of Scott Adams out there in America. I think they are choosing to vote for the Republican Party. I have the knee-jerk liberal response that you probably think I do to this. I have no issue with him losing his column over this. But I think there's a bigger, more important question. What the fuck are we going to do about all the people out there in America that agree with Scott Adams? Because this answer, like you're evil and racist, is not going to get us anywhere. It's not a viable electoral strategy. We've got to think about something different to do here.
Well, my thing is being racist is not a permanent thing. It's a temporary state of mind. So I think Scott Adams is a victim, and it sounds like Doobie is too, of watching certain videos all day long. It's like basing your view of America off libs at TikTok. It's ridiculous. And it's a social media problem. It's temporary. It's something both sides are looking at right now. So I don't think Scott Adams is permanently racist. I think he's just watching videos of black people beat up white people all day for some weird reason and feels that represents the black community, which I think is horrific. And that's my whole point. It's not that white people aren't victims of hate crimes, okay? I'm sure they are. I've never experienced it. I'm sure it happens, but using it as some sort of deflection as well, there's hate crimes being done by everybody, so of course he should feel legitimate in what he believes. It's crazy to me, man. It's just what do you call it? It's just trying to shine a light somewhere else in order to avoid the conversation. So, Doobie, I don't know why you're so passionate about proving that white people are the real victims here. Is there any reason why you go down this road?
I'm a Nazi, clearly. But it's not that, right? And I think that you're misrepresenting what I said earlier. So I'm Scott Adams in the original video when he brings up these videos of black people beating up white people. pretty clear first in the initial video, but then in the follow-up stream that he did afterwards, he's saying that he doesn't think this is representative of reality. He doesn't think that black people are just going around beating up white people at random. He says that he's tired of seeing these videos because he believes, and this is like a big push with his work, right? Or his philosophy, I guess, that the media is trying to divide us, and that these videos being pushed out by the algorithm, whatever algorithm he's being affected by, is part of this push by the media to create division between black and white people, right? So he's seeing. So he thinks that in the original stream where he mentions that he's tired of it, but in the next stream, in the original stream he says he's tired of it and he says he understands it's anecdotal and it's not representative of reality. In the next stream he goes into more detail, right, where he talks about how the media is pushing these things out to create division, and that's what he's tired of. Right? He doesn't think that black people are just attacking white people at random, but he does think that the media is trying to sow division, right? So. Yeah, I think that's. I don't think maybe he's a victim. Maybe he's the victim of he gets mad at those videos, so he watches them. So TikTok or YouTube or whatever feeds him more of those videos because he watches them, right? Maybe that's a thing for sure. But I don't know how you took from that.
He's a wildly successful syndicated columnist. He's a best-selling author. He's got a huge Twitter platform. He's got his own YouTube show. He is the media, right? He's not like some invalid passive vector here. Like he's putting.
Yeah, I semi-agree with that.
Well, but Doobie, my question is then, if that's true, and I accept what you're saying is true, why is his solution for white people to get away from black people if it's the media's fault?
I think that was it the first video or the second video I said this? He basically feels like, and I don't know if I said this before he got here, but what I got from the first video, but then again from the follow-up streams and some of the other interviews that he did that I watched, then I watched some of his past work where he was talking about like race issues and whatnot, is he feels like somebody who has done a lot of work for black people. I don't know what work he's done, but he feels like somebody's done work for black people, supported black causes, whatever, right? Maybe he like ticked a box in the voting booth at some point to vote for a black person. Now he feels like he's done work. I don't know. But for whatever reason, he feels like he's somebody who's done work for black people in his life.
And don't forget he identified as a black person, which is absolutely the greatest thing a white person can do to help.
Which is why
Americans.
it's easy to read that he's got a lot of spite with the society and not necessarily black.
Yeah, not to mention, I actually ran into a thread from Brianna Wu like 3 years ago where she was arguing with Scott Adams because he said that the only reason he got like fired was because he was white.
Right. But that was beautiful. It was a great 3-day feud that I had with him. He's been on this train since the 90s. So.
Hold on, Doobie, please. I'm begging you. It sounds like you're going down that road, so please.
Yeah. So what I got from the initial video and the interviews that I watched and whatnot is that he feels like a white person who's done work for black people, and he for whatever reason thinks his poll is representative, right? Maybe he didn't look into how it was put together, or he doesn't understand how that works, or whatever, right? Because I think to me it's clearly something that's meant to inflame some kind of debate and draw attention to Rasmussen, of course. So he thinks that the result of all his work trying to support black people, black issues, is that they dislike him and that they think he's a racist. So he feels betrayed. He feels like he's resigned to the fact that no matter what he does, they're never going to like him because of his skin color. So he wants to separate. He just doesn't want to be involved in black issues anymore or be associated with that group anymore. That's what I got from it, right? Not that he hates black people or that he wants to say that white people are the real victims. He thinks everybody's being victimized, but he just doesn't want to be associated with a group that's going to hate him no matter what he does because of his skin color.
The group doesn't hate him. 26% of them, if you want to be charitable, hate him. So 75% of them like him. Why would he say, let's get away from that group?
That's not is not the opposite end of that. It's just whether or not it's okay to be white, whether or not that's a valid statement.
I'm just being charitable, trying to play the same game here.
Yeah, that's the thing though. So it wasn't so it was like 26% no, and then like 20-something% are not sure. And he's taking the not sure and he's lumping them in with a no is what he's saying. And saying so about nearly 50% of black people don't like me, right? Because if you're not sure if it's okay to be a white person, there's some issue there, so you don't like white people, right? That seems like that's the way he's taking it. And if you mentioned earlier that you think that I'm invested in making white people out to be the real victims, and that's not what it is for me either. I'm very anti-race. I refuse to tell people my race usually. Right? I'm not a white person. Right? My skin color is not white. If you guys are wondering,
know,
and I'm sure
I
most of you
know.
guys won't believe me. So it's not about like wanting to have a new victim that I can carry around and say, oh God, look at how you guys are hurting these people. I think that the discourse around race issues is too there's too much. I feel like people are, rather than saying, "Hey, race shouldn't matter," they say race should matter, and it does matter. And in fact, because you're the wrong race, we get to attack you, right? And because we're the correct race, we're always the victims, no matter what we do. And then you have white people are saying, "Hey, they're black, so they're always the victims." And in fact, I'm going to attack you with them because you have the wrong opinion on affirmative action or whatever the fuck it is, right? So like it just becomes this thing where black and brown and white people are like ganging up on white people and Asian people actually who disagree with a certain political perspective, and they're using race to do it, which I think is the wrong thing to do. I think if you're going to attack people on the issues, you talk about the issues, not the race.
Can I draw? I think you may appreciate this perspective. So one of the things I really remember from the DNC, the final night of the DNC, where Hillary Clinton got the nomination, was they did this video, right? And they made sure to have this moment where talking at the DNC really stood with LGBT people, right? So they have this video that comes out and it's like gay people, lesbians, transgender people, just this wonderful moment at the thing talking about how much they support that. But then if you look at the actual policies that the Democratic Party pursued at the federal level for the 2 years after that, there was literally nothing major that you can point to. Like no major bill got introduced in the Senate. There was, and that is a pattern that has continued. So I am very familiar with this idea of being marketed, right? Like my identity being marketed by a political party because it's convenient, and then the policy not being there on the same end. They do it with women as well. So I agree with you. I think we need to be a lot more suspicious of that overall. I think if you look at what we all want, it's actually a lot more similar than I think we're willing to admit.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a tangent anyways with the Hillary Clinton thing, but I think for her specifically too, that's why that video of her having the public position, private position talk at whatever show was so damning for her, is because people felt that like sentiment going around, felt like it was real, and then they finally got that confirmation.
Yeah.
Wait, let me ask Doobie. I'm curious. Don't you think it's a bit ridiculous for Scott Adams to jump to this conclusion based off watching highly charged videos online that are not reflective of America?
Yeah,
Or do
absolutely.
you think like videos like that are actually what's going on in America and the truth needs to be out there? Like Libs of TikTok is the real deal and it's
Yeah,
that big
like
of a deal.
all the trans people are trying to groom kids, of course. No, yeah, obviously it's not true, right? Like obviously
Okay.
it was stupid for him to jump to this conclusion. But because I'm a person with empathy, because I can extend charity to some people, yeah, I can understand from his perspective, right? Looking at this as somebody who's less sophisticated, less intelligent than myself, I can understand how somebody could jump to that conclusion. And in fact, people on the left do this all the time. And from my experience, when they do, we tend to dismiss it and say, "Oh, it's understandable that you feel this way," right? I think the issue here is that he's not being accepted at any charity. I mean, you were on here saying that he has like Nazi shit in his closet, right? Like, I think if we try to understand his perspective a little bit, we can come to a better understanding of why there's actually some truth to what he's saying, and there is an issue here of anti-white racism that's being normalized in the United States, and that we should stop doing that.
Wait, where's the
Yeah,
problem of anti-white racism? I'm so confused.
I think you're confused about a lot of things. But
No,
we
I actually
disagree.
want you to point to me where this anti-white racism, rather than just social media clips.
Okay. So this was like years ago, right? This was like the first time it was really apparent to me, as a brown person, was during it was just after Bernie Sanders lost the primary the first time, and I think it was Simone Sanders, if I remember correctly. She was on CNN, on like a panel with a bunch of people talking about the primary, and she said something like, this isn't an exact quote, it's off the top of my head. She said something like, "We don't need another white man running the Democrat Party, or another white person running the Democrat Party," something to that effect. And to me, that immediately struck me as racist. Like, why should their race matter? Like, why does it matter if it's a white man or white woman or a black person or Asian or whatever the fuck it is? Why is race a factor here?
And-
But for everybody else there was no pushback. It was totally fine for her to say that. Totally fine for her to just outright say, "Hey, we don't need this racial group at the top of the party." And that to me, that was the first time that I noticed in the mainstream someone being what I thought was pretty racist and getting zero pushback because of their skin color. And there's been many examples of this going forward. Like it's fucking everywhere these days.
I can give a way simpler example too. And this is something that has been in a Marvel movie, no less, is calling white people colonizers. Like we're reducing somebody down to their skin color because of something somebody else did hundreds of years ago. And then that's supposed to be like a character assassination of them. That's a very heavy anti-white sentiment to have.
Okay,
I-
so
So far, I'm hearing
I don't think that there's
bunch
a
of
huge
words.
plague of
You
anti-white
guys
racism
disagree
because a
with this.
Marvel movie used colonizer in a joking manner.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Like,
Black
I'm sorry, Twitch
commentators
is
on
banning
YouTube and
people
Twitch
for
don't use
using the
word
C
colonizer.
slur, so I
Are
don't
you
think
kidding me?
anti-white
Some of-
racism is a
Some
huge
of the
issue in
most
America right now.
popular black commentators on YouTube use specifically colonizer to characterize white people, and they do not call them white. They will just say colonizers.
But do you think that hurts people in some way? How does that
Yes,
hurt white
absolutely.
people? How?
Absolutely.
How does it hurt
Well,
white people?
Wait, hold on. So
How would you?
again, I'm not a white person. I'm a brown person, but my ancestors were also
okay.
rapists and slavers and imperialists, right? Just like everybody else's. So if I were judged in perpetuity for the raping and the conquering and the murdering and enslaving that my ancestors did, and I were seen as somehow less than other people or somehow morally fucking tainted for shit that I didn't even do that happened hundreds of years ago, yeah, I'd absolutely feel a certain way about that. I'd feel bad about that. Why the fuck are you judging me because shit happened hundreds of years ago that I had nothing to do with?
Okay, but
I genuinely
you feel
hear
bad.
I genuinely hear what you're saying there, and I think generally speaking, like painting white people with the broad brush as colonizers, I think that is messaging I personally don't agree with. This is what I would urge you to consider here. So I've done a lot of work trying to get women better represented in the tech industry, right? Women leave tech at a rate 4 times that of men. We're barely represented in engineering positions. There's a ton of just discrimination up and down the board. Look at the Activision lawsuit where a woman that died by suicide, her direct report passed around nudes of her to all the men on her team after she died, right? There's a lot of really terrible
this
stuff
girl.
going on.
Yes.
So I hear what you're saying. One of the things I've run into, and I'm saying this very humbly, I don't have a great answer for this, is that when you're in a group and you're trying to say, we are hurting, things are stacked up against us, right? This is what we're generally facing from this other group. For whatever reason, it really triggers men. And y'all don't want to hear it. I have no idea on earth how you message this stuff that doesn't instantly get people on the defensive. And it's very challenging because I think like that Simone Sanders clip, there is a truth that like one of the reasons the DNC is failing is because we are not outreaching to communities of color in the ways that we need to. Look at the Latino turnout in the last election. We majorly failed at that. And I do think that is a perspective we increasingly need in leadership. I don't know how you talk about that honestly and don't also really upset like some white people where it's very triggering to hear that because I really understand both sides.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, and I'm
if-
sure
if
for a
we're-
lot of men, it sucks to be called a virgin incel. But if I go and say that we should like, get away from women, never interact with them again, I think I would rightfully be called like a fucking misogynist. And
But
I
we should be knowing that we're treating incels and virgins as insults differently because those aren't like immutable characteristics. And to be fair, the reason in response to Brianna, why I think men have such a vicious reaction to a lot of these things is they're not given proper outlets in society to actually take care of these emotions where I think women are encouraged to.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about black people being the victims of racism, it causes them to have a lot of very toxic opinions and toxic characterizations of those who like would oppress them. I think we're seeing the effects of that in white people with like Scott Adams rhetoric, and my issue is that it seems like we're not taking it seriously.
I mean, I think taking what he says, like when he like, I think he's only stirring up more racial tensions when he's like advising people to get out of black neighborhoods. That's been a huge problem of systemic racism in the United States, where like black people have kind of been segregated to their own neighborhoods, and it is really difficult for a lot of them to move to white neighborhoods. As a result, that's why the education system is so fucked, because they're typically in poorer neighborhoods, and the school system is based off of was it property taxes? So yeah, I don't know. I feel like we can talk about those issues, but the prescriptions he's making are just hurting racial divisions across America, and I think that's like a bad thing
Yeah.
that should be called out for.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that was stupid. I think that the truth is, um, if he believes this poll is accurate, right? He thinks that half of black people are just going to dislike white people, no matter what, apparently. Um, then yeah, it would make sense if you were a white person trying to give advice to other white people. Say, hey, you should avoid black people because they don't like you, and they're not going to like you no matter what you do. I think if black people saw a poll where they saw that half of white people are going to dislike them forever, right? Black people would probably say, "Hey, black people, you should probably avoid white people. Just stay in black areas. Avoid these people because half of them don't like you and might hurt you." Right? So I think this is a reasonable position to have if you think the poll is accurate. And again, I think you'd agree with that, right? I don't understand.
Doobie, can I ask you? Do you think, as a public
ask me
figure,
anything
which
you
he
want.
absolutely is, do you think that you're allowed to just take any poll, regardless of how misleading or how disingenuous it is, and you can make whatever prescription you want under the basis that you didn't know better?
I think people are allowed to be incorrect sometimes, no matter their position in life. Yeah, it's
I
okay
mean,
to
I
be
don't.
emotional. It's okay to see a stupid poll and react emotionally on a live stream. Shit happens. People do dumb things sometimes. And then afterwards, he went back and he clarified and he said, "Hey, yeah, I was being hyperbolic. I don't mean all black people, obviously. A lot of this was hyperbole, and I shouldn't have said it that way. And I was clumsy in my messaging." So he's
I fact check. I did not hear him ever apologize for this, and I've watched every one of his stuff.
No,
And
I think what he
yeah.
actually did is he kind of said that he wasn't using the poll to like bolster his point, but that did not come across in his language in that first video. I will say
I think
that
he
much.
absolutely did say. He said that, like, he basically said, "I'm not. This isn't even mine. This is just based off the poll. Black people are a
No,
racist
yes,
hate
but
group."
in
He was
his
directly
response
quoting
video,
that poll.
in his response video though, he was saying the basis upon his opinions was not sourced from the poll, meaning like he had already had these positions, but the poll just happened to fit his narrative.
Yeah, and I
And
think
that's what
Brianna
he was
mentioned
using
this
to present.
earlier. I think he had implicit bias that he's been basically waiting for, some poll to come out or some statistic that he could use and run with, and basically make these like really, really strong claims.
That's what I'm
Do you guys
saying. Like, he
remember?
came out so strongly, and he undermined himself too by saying his individual interactions with black people are fine, and so he's saying just, I don't even know what he's trying to say at some point, because he did he not say that his individual interactions were fine with black people?
Yeah, he's friends with
Yeah.
Hotep Jesus.
His neighbor's
Okay.
black.
Wait,
His
hold on.
neighbor's a
Hotep Jesus
doctor
is
who's
a
black.
Hold on, to be
So
super clear.
I don't even
Hotep
understand.
Jesus is a racist black
look at this
separatist, right?
dude.
He was like anti-Semitic, so like I wouldn't say that's a good thing.
Okay, I just
Well,
what
I mean,
I
when
want to
that's
do.
when he's citing that
Yeah,
as
he
his
is.
black friend, I think that's a pretty
Okay.
funny thing for him to.
Here's what we're going to do. We're going to refocus the conversation and move on to the next kind of aspect of this. So we're going to go for like another 45 minutes, an hour tops. Okay.
Sure.
I'm going to give you all a chance to give your take on the new question, but as part of that, feel free to give like a sentence or two on your final thoughts on what we've just spoken about to speed things along a bit. Okay. So the second thing that I want to get to is following these comments. Scott Adams was dropped from a number of projects. I believe that every newspaper, he sold his comic strip to a syndication platform. The syndication platform essentially cut ties with him. He's also, I believe, had a book deal cancelled. And there's obviously other aspects that are affecting his kind of professional life. So, some are saying this is cancel culture. Other people are saying this is simply consequences for bad actions. So I just want to kind of focus the conversation around that topic. So we'll go with you first, Sick. Final thoughts on the last topic and thoughts on the new question.
Yeah, so Scott Adams himself says that companies do have the right to their own free speech. He defends this. While he disagrees with their actions, he totally defends it too. So would I consider it cancel culture? Sure, but it's also just well within the company's right.
Very mediocre answer, thank you. IRI, go on.
Well, I
Sorry.
go back to my original point that he reacted so strongly to this poll that I have to believe he was harboring these like racist thoughts, and I feel bad for him. And I'll be as charitable as possible and say he probably doesn't know that phrase "it's okay to be white" is associated with anything. If I'm being charitable, and he for some reason got upset that like 30 or 40 black people said that. And for him to react this strongly just tells me that he's harboring these racist thoughts. And I don't think it's a permanent stain on him. I think he can change. That's why I made the comment that this is the type of guy who has some old Nazi memorabilia in his closet and takes it out and shows people, hey, look at this letter opener I have with the swastika on, and he thinks it's cool. He's one of these guys. So I wonder what's going on with this man that he would react so strongly. As far as losing his deals and all that, I mean, people don't want to be associated with shitty people, so there's consequences. But I have hope that he can change.
Okay, so the threat of losing money to make him change. Interesting perspective. Double Shine, go on.
Yeah, I think I would be a lot more charitable if this was like some Grandpa Joe working at Walmart who posted it on Facebook, and he might have like a little bit of racist tendencies. But this is like a public figure. He's like an international celebrity. He has like 1 million followers on Twitter. If you're gonna go online, you're gonna say some crazy shit. You have to expect that this is gonna happen, and I think that's totally within the rights of all of the private companies that are working with him. That they don't want to be working with someone who's making these racist comments. We saw it like just last year with Kanye, where he got dropped from like all of his sponsorships for the anti-Semitic stuff. So really, it's no surprise. I think least of all, Scott Adams would be surprised by this decision.
Okay, Brianna?
I feel like I've had my say on Scott Adams. So I want to move on and answer your question because I think this is a really interesting one. So, as I understand it, behind the scenes, if you think it's hard to get in and be a successful Twitch streamer or YouTuber, your odds are that much less possible of becoming a cartoonist, right? It's essentially a monopoly with syndication, right? And I'm lucky enough to have friends that work in this field. So the story, as I understand it from behind the scenes, is there was a ton of pressure to by his peers, basically, that they'd been increasingly uncomfortable with his statements over the years. Yeah, like look at the funny pages, look at the gentle humor of the funny pages. I can't say I know for sure, but I don't think most cartoonists are like raving like political extremists, right? I think this is like a workplace issue of them being, yeah, you know what, we're really not comfortable with continuing to share space with this, and we would like for you to find a new direction. So to me, that just seems like a workplace process adjudicating itself. As far as his book sales, I can say as someone who has a book deal going on right now, the people you work with really care about their reputation, right? The people that work with people like me, right, don't tend to go represent conservative authors, right? So I think in this case, it's not like there's not a massive conservative press that's working in conjunction with the more liberal press, right? Like many of the best-selling books out there are by this specialty conservative press. So I think he'll go over to that and will be very successful, and eventually it'll probably help his sales when it eventually comes out. That said, I think one of the things that's changed in my personal approach to cancel culture is I've seen a lack of willingness from progressives to argue our ideas in hostile environments, which is part of why I'm here today. And I think that we need to think a lot more carefully about shutting down every opinion we don't agree with. We've got to have an answer for it. And I think if you don't go to the gym and work out, your muscles get weaker. And I think the Democrats' ability to respond to conservative arguments, I think our muscles are weaker because we've become increasingly siloed, in my estimation.
Okay, thank you for the very thorough answer. Doobie, go on.
I think that there was a poll by NPR like 4 or 5 years ago, where just over half of white people polled said that they felt like they were being they'd been discriminated against for being white in the United States. That was 4 or 5 years ago. Last year there was a follow-up poll by Pew Research, where Black and Hispanic Republicans, I think like 65% of Black Republicans polled, and like 30-something% of Hispanic Republicans polled, or Latino Republicans polled, said that they'd seen a lot more discrimination directed at white people in the last 5 years, right? So I think the trend these feelings exist out there. Right, that white people are being discriminated against, that it is normalized. It's okay. It's being dismissed. It's being laughed off. It's like white fragility. These feelings exist, and I think we need to deal with those feelings because I don't think they're coming from nowhere. I think there's absolutely a trend on in some left wing spaces where anti-white discrimination is kind of laughed off as something that's not a big deal. Where rather than say, hey, this is a bad thing that shouldn't be happening, the response is, oh well, hey, they're not in power, so who cares, right? Black people don't run the country, so it's okay for them to be racist to you. What are you complaining about? The president's white, so why do you care that Tom down the street is treating you like shit? I think these responses are like flaccid. I think they're fucking terrible, and I think that the left has a huge problem with anti-white racism, and I think we've got to start addressing it because this is why I think Scott Adams had these like underlying feelings that led to him overreacting to this poll in such a way.
Okay,
Because
now
there
answer
has
the
been
question.
everywhere.
Should he be cancelled? Yes or no? Is it fair
Sure.
to cancel him?
Yeah, I think it's fair to have him fired, have him lose all his shit based on his overreaction to this stuff. Sure. I think a big platform comes with big responsibility. That's totally fine. I don't care.
What? Unbelievable. Does anyone
Is that,
here?
is that everybody?
I thought you'd be okay. Well,
Well, I wanted
hold
to
on.
say something
Wait,
in response to Brianna.
To be clear, Chud, I think it's
is it
stupid.
fair? Is it fair to? Is it fair? Like, even if you do kind of agree with
no.
it, is it fair?
No.
Maybe
No.
my pedantic debate brain is awakened right now. So I'm going to say, oh, what does fair mean, right? But I guess no. My answer would be, I don't think it's reasonable to think he's like a racist or a Nazi or some shit like some people here are saying.
Okay.
I don't think it's fair to say that, oh, he's not allowed to be emotional and overreact to a poll like everybody else fucking does sometimes.
The thing is, I just find this response of like, oh, well, the company can do what they like. I just find it a little bit insubstantial because the company are only doing it because of the fucking public backlash that occurred.
In my ideal
so
America, people wouldn't overreact to his overreaction with it they are. Okay, that's what I was saying.
Okay, when Brianna is making statements about this is the company adjudicating itself, people care a lot about their reputation. I'm sorry, but a lot of people in these spaces, creative spaces, just need to grow some balls. Okay, your reputation as a cartoonist should not be 13% of my friends are black. It should not be, oh, everybody I work with has these opinions. We should understand that if there's thousands of people or hundreds of people working under a company, not everybody's going to agree on everything. And at some level, like, we're going to have to accept that somebody's going to say something offensive that we do not like. Maybe it is not a good look for our company, but then maybe our company can say, hey, we don't speak for our employees don't speak for us. Maybe we should have some of those practices come back instead of trying to whitewash any opinions in our society and say, create this precedent that just because you believe something that might be racist or even slightly offensive, we need to fire you and cleanse you from society. I don't think that companies are acting outside of their rights, the limitations of their rights. I just think it's wrong how they're engaging with their rights.
I think I think you absolutely should have a right. Like if you own a company and you have someone working for you.
The right.
Yeah, so for example, maybe we might have an editor who goes online and says some incredibly inflammatory comments, right? I think you should absolutely be allowed to, terminate your work with them if they're like representing your brand poorly.
Yeah, just to steelman this argument, though, just to respond to what you're saying, though, I'm old enough to remember Iraq War II and Doonesbury constantly making comic strips making fun of George Bush and basically alleging that he was a war criminal, right? And getting censored over and over and over and over again. And maybe there is some truth. Like when I think about what makes the comics page business work, like let's just be clear, it's generally not funny, which is why I stopped reading it. I think there is a lack of artistic freedom that has existed there that doesn't seem to be good for the medium overall. And I think people on both sides of that equation have found that syndication company not willing to stand by them. So I think I'm not sure I agree that Scott Adams should not face consequences, but I think if you consider this playbook has been used against the left in critiquing what I consider a war crime, I think it's a fair point.
One thing that Brianna mentioned. One thing that Brianna mentioned earlier about how a lot of the coworkers and the other cartoonists were actually speaking out. I actually think I have a huge problem with that. And I think we saw it last year with the Washington Post journalist that basically went on this huge tirade against another coworker. And like, I feel like I have a much bigger problem with coworkers like invoking cancel culture to get other people fired that they're working with. 'Cause that seems a little crazy.
I think the reality is that if Brianna swapped out black people with white people, and a lot of the tweets where she like specifically calls out white people, she'd be canceled. Right? I think that's a fucking issue. I think if racism is going to happen, if overgeneralizations this way based on race are going to happen, it should be called out every time. Right, so I don't think it should be okay. It should be accepted or normalized. Say, oh, I can shit talk white people all over fucking Twitter, but they're white, so it's fine. I think we should just stop blasting people based on their race.
Yeah, and honestly, this whole idea that because you are engaging in a market practice or like, let's say like selling a service, so what would you call it? Whoever's distributing the Dilbert cartoon, just because they're syndication, okay. But just because they're doing that doesn't mean they're endorsing all of Scott Adams' words or everything that's in Dilbert. They're just engaging in a market practice. And unfortunately, the problem with cancel culture is we're having this sort of idea that because I engage in selling you a service, now I'm endorsing everything you do. That's not true. And that's sort of the same sentiment that was used to put pressure on Cloudflare in removing Kiwi Farms and a bunch of other different cancellations. Now, obviously, these are more like right-leaning cancellations, but it happens on the left too. Brianna gave a good example of that. Like, I don't think that just because you engage in a practice with somebody that means that you approve of everything that you do, and it means you should like morally shun them. Well, maybe you could morally shun them, but like don't close your practice with them. I just think this is a very toxic thing to normalize in our society, and it already feels like we're way beyond that.
Well, I
Well,
do
Scott
think
Adams
in this
doesn't.
particular case, Scott Adams has said these same sentiments for years. He phrased it this way, this time in a way that, in my opinion, really forced his syndication's hand. I mean, calling black people a hate group in video, come on. That is a really extremist statement. And you know, there were a lot
Sure.
of things leading up to that they looked the other way and looked the other way and looked the other way. To a certain point, I think there's a real difference in being able to say things that are provocative, right? That add to a conversation, and just being a jackass to be a jackass, right? And I think in that latter, I don't think you should be surprised if you face consequences.
Can I pose you a question?
Please.
If the company distributing his cartoon didn't do anything after knowing about that statement and everybody being enraged about it, do you think it would be fair for people to say that they're kind of co-signing it, or they don't care about those sentiments or the harm that could be incurred by saying that on the internet?
Yeah, I think I would feel like I've certainly been in workplace situations where I haven't felt comfortable working with someone. So yeah, 100%.
Okay, I guess that's probably where we disagree then, because
I take my integrity very seriously, and I think there's very rarely harm in holding yourself to high standards in who you associate with.
Would you apologize to white people for all the racist comments you've made to them on your Twitter platform?
If you want to
Please,
give me a
Brianna,
situation-
apologize to me.
Yes. Point to a tweet, and I'm happy to talk about it if it's germane, but I don't think it's the topic at hand.
Well,
It's fine.
because you guys are talking about, hey, we need to like stop, this is an issue and blah blah blah. But I feel like if you're actively doing it on Twitter, IRI is apologizing for it here. Double Shine is, I think he just might be genuinely stupid. I think that if this is an issue, right, like we gotta handle it, and one of the ways to handle it is you tell the people contributing it to stop fucking doing it. So yeah, stopping racist toward white people, stop overgeneralizing based on people's race and skin color, stop doing that shit.
Do you have any examples of this though?
And when it happens, IRA, don't say, "Oh, who cares? You know what's happened? Their feelings are hurt. Who gives a fuck?" That's ridiculous.
Okay. Well, I'm being hyperbolic, but look, Scott Adams doesn't even think that he suffered anything. He tweeted out earlier today, social media and banking unaffected, personal life improved, never been more popular in my life. He seems pretty happy with what happened
I'm
to
not
him
talking
here.
about just Scott Adams. I'm talking about the wider issue of anti-white racism on the left and how you specifically, are contributing to that problem.
I think it's a distraction from actual things that are affecting people's lives. I don't know any white people that have ever been affected by anti-white racism. It's a joke,
Okay.
man.
That's ridiculous.
Well, you can
Okay,
even
so
see
children-
Doobie in this
children growing up-
conversation
Listen,
pivoting
children
off
growing
to
up-
his
I'm not
point, which had
pivoting off
nothing to do with
I'm
canceling.
not pivoting off
but-
anything. I'm very specifically on the topic of
You're-
anti-white racism and how you guys are contributing to that issue that I think needs to be dealt with.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about cancel culture, and now you're asking Brianna to
I think you
apologize
should
for
be
her tweets
canceled.
that you don't
I
even
think
have.
you specifically should be canceled for contributing to anti-white racism.
Please send it to my
Contributing
workplace.
to
I'd love to
racism-
see. I'd love to see the review my
contributing
clips.
to racism,
Again,
contributing to
but
racism
listen.
generally, because when you do that shit, it's gonna push some percentage of white people toward racial identitarianism because you're attacking them based on their fucking skin color. So eventually,
Let-
some of these
let
people are
me-
gonna find a group that says, "Hey, actually, it's okay to be white," and hey, actually, white people about the Western world, and actually,
Okay.
Hitler wasn't a bad guy. Like you guys are pushing people in that direction.
I
I-
feel
let me-
like
I mean,
you're.
Can I
ironically-
take a step back, please? Please,
Yeah.
please. Can I take just
Go
want to take a step back? And I
Go
would say I think Scott Adams is a victim here, and I think a lot of white
Okay.
people that are white racism, whatever, they're victims too, man. But of the media manipulating them, and I'm talking about like whatever the hell Scott Adams was watching that led him to believe that white people are being beat up every single day. He said that on the first podcast or whatever. He said, "I'm seeing videos of white people being beaten up by black people every day, and I'm sick of it." That to me is the problem right there. I don't.
Maybe you
think
should just
that
stop
he
watching
was-
them. Maybe you stop following those accounts.
Well,
that might help,
Bro,
mightn't
just
it?
close your eyes.
Yeah.
But come on, Chad. This is crazy. It's
Well,
like
hey,
it's
those
being
white people
pushed-
probably
it's
have more
being
money than
pushed
those
on
black
us.
people. Who cares if they're getting beat up, right? That's fuck it. Who gives a fuck?
No,
That's
but the
basically what
point
he's
is
saying.
that the point is it's being pushed on him because it's I don't think normally that he would have this opinion if he wasn't being inundated with videos for whatever he's following that show him white people being beat up by black people.
Yeah, I mean, the real winner, the real winner in all of this.
I think if you stopped dismissing or trivializing the experiences of white people who are saying outright that they feel discriminated against for being white, white children who are growing up in a society where even black people and Hispanics on the Republic, sure, there are Republicans, and I guess that makes them less black or Hispanic to you guys, but even they are saying, hey, yeah, I've seen way more anti-white discrimination in the last 5 years. So white children growing up in this kind of society where they feel attacked for their skin color, to me, is as bad as an Asian or a black person or an Indian or whatever the fuck growing up in a similar society. I don't like racism. I don't make excuses for it. I think that you do, and I think you should stop.
Yeah, okay, but I think these people are not basing that off their personal experience. I think they're like Scott Adams, basing it off videos, seeing it happen in other places.
Let's get on
And
this
I think we
question.
should-
Hold on. Can I really mean this. So I see a bunch of posters on your wall of races I've worked, like right behind you, Warnock's race down in Georgia. Can you honestly tell me, in your experience working these races, that you've never talked to a white person that felt that the Democratic Party had moved away from their core interests? Because I've heard that a lot, canvassing and phone banking.
Thank you. Jeez.
Usually it doesn't come up when I'm knocking on a door and saying, "Hey, election's coming up. Do you know where to vote?"
Yeah.
That's not usually a topic of conversation that comes up. But I've
Well,
never
some
had someone
people
bring
tell
that up
you,
to
yeah.
me. No.
Yeah,
And I was
okay.
mostly knocking on doors in black neighborhoods for Warnock.
That's fair enough.
Well done, you, mate.
Oh, so you were
I've never
complaining
met a
about the white
person-
people with them.
I've never
I'm
been
not-
discriminated against, and I've never met a white person that feels they have either. And I talk to a lot of white people. So perhaps that's anecdotal, but that's
Sure.
my experience.
Fair enough. Look, I'm not. I'm on record here. I'm saying it doesn't bother me. I'm just saying, like, I think there's a core truth here that there are a bunch of Scott Adams out there. And I do think we need to be more cognizant over all of our messaging on the left. Politics is about addition, not subtraction. And one of the things I've really had to think about post Gamergate is, like, we kept giving messages out there like women are not being treated fairly, women are not being treated fairly. And it really turned into like this gender Cold War, right? Are conditions better in the video game industry for women today? I don't think the answer is a whole lot better. I don't think that tactic is working. So something I am truly, genuinely struggling with is how do we elevate the people in our society that need it? Because I think we all agree, Black people are not being treated fairly in America. Women, LGBT people are not being treated fairly. But this messaging we have of you've got to lose and I've got to win, if there's evidence that it's working, I can't see it. Like, the Democratic Party is hemorrhaging working class white voters, which I'm from the South. That used to be our base. And I think this is, if we are serious about winning, if we are serious about keeping power, I think it's something we should be thinking very critically about.
I totally agree, Brianna. And like you said, there are a lot of Scott Adams. I wish that more attention was actually focused on media outlets like Rasmussen Reports that are pushing out these like highly inflammatory statements that
Yes.
are complete bullshit. Because
100%.
they're the real winners in all of this. It's not the woke white liberals. Even Scott Adams, if you think he's been making victory laps, you should see how happy Rasmussen Reports has been that they've made national news.
Right.
Yeah, this is my point. Like, our fellow Americans are not inherently racist. I don't think there's some huge racism problem out there. I think things are being inflamed by our social media. That's what I'm saying. Scott Adams, I joke when I say he's got the Nazi memorabilia, but I'm saying he was radicalized by videos that he was watching. And I think a lot of people are victims of that in America. And that's why I say, why waste our time with this sort of anti-white or whatever racism? The focus should be on how these people are being radicalized, because I think Scott Adams was radicalized.
I think you radicalize people when you dismiss white feelings, right? When you say, "Hey, white person, yeah, you're saying you're discriminated against, but who cares? You know, what are you actually dealing with? It doesn't really matter." I think when you say shit like that, IRI, you're radicalizing people. You're pushing them away from your position, your side of the aisle, and toward extremism, toward people who are racial identitarianism, toward people who are racist.
I
Also,
first of all, this is Twitch and it's hyperbolic, okay?
There are
So I
plenty of
wouldn't
people in the
I wouldn't
audience that
say like
heard that
this.
and were disgusted that you said that, and I think they
Oh,
rightfully
come
so.
on.
yeah,
These are
I don't
grown
think you should
adults.
say it's
None of them give a
hyperbolic because
crap,
that dismisses the nature and severity of the statements. I think a lot of this shit is very real and should be taken seriously. I don't think it's hyperbolic at all.
You think white people are being discriminated against, and it's something that we should
Yes.
have congressional
Yes.
hearings about and start focusing on?
Yeah.
Really?
No, I think you should just
Congressional
stop.
hearings, no. But
What?
but even in this whole situation, we're talking about like white people being perpetuators of anti-white sentiment. I think a lot of that can just be felt in the environment every single time I'm talking to a black person, or used to talk to a black person when I used to live in Flint, and I had to like dance along words, because if I said something like "you guys," that would be so looked at, like I would be under a microscope anytime I said a fucking sentence. Like, get over it. I get you're looking at me as a white person and you've probably had some bad experiences, but that doesn't mean you get to reduce my entire race down to that. I think it happens every single time a non-white commentator on YouTube or Twitch talks about white people in a very generalized way and nobody checks them on it. I think this issue is a lot bigger than people like to give credit to.
Yeah, so
I
IRS, stop
listen.
radicalizing people.
Listen, I'm out there in the real world. You see the posters, Brianna? I've
do.
worked for some of these campaigns, not been paid, but volunteered. I've knocked on doors, and
Good for
nobody
you.
brings up any of this stuff when I'm out there. The real world, people get along just fine. I understand there's instances. I understand it's out there. There is racism out there, but we're not born racist, right? We're all
Welcome
this is
to
something
Chud
we
Nation.
learn. This is something that's taught to us. This is due to bad experiences we have. This is due to ignorance. And a lot of that is being amplified by things like Libs of TikTok, for example, that gives people negative generalizations that they learn to accept because they don't have any personal experience with these people or these groups. And so to me, that's the bigger problem, not dealing with the effects of the effects of that. I want to deal with the cause, not the effect. That's why I find this a distraction to be like, well, white people are being discriminated against. I feel a lot of people are seeing it somewhere else through online spaces and not experiencing it themselves.
I just could not see that
I think-
statement being okay for any other race. Is that saying racism against black people is the distraction? It's like, no, I'm
Right.
sorry, I don't think that applies.
Welcome to Chud Nation.
Yeah, like
And
IRS. So
Anonymous
you're
user
gonna lean on
gifted a
your
tier 1
experience, right?
sub to
Knocking
Kai
doors,
Senate.
touching grass, etc. I'm gonna lean on my experience as a Discord
Sure.
mod. Okay, for 5 to
Now,
6
Scott
years, I
Adams.
think, running the largest, most active political server on the Discord platform. 75,000 people we've got on there right
Have
now,
a small
unfortunately.
pork nugget on
I've
me.
spoken to lots of racists, lots of young racist men of all stripes, all colors, all ideologies, but lots of white people who are like just racist, right? And something that I hear from a lot of these people for
Welcome
years
to Chud Nation.
is that their concerns
Chud
are
Sino,
dismissed.
Chud
That it's
Sino,
okay to be
Chud
racist toward white
Sino.
people, and this is why they feel like they need to identify with the race. They need to embrace the race because people of their skin color are the only people that are gonna embrace and protect them from people like you, from the good white people who want to shit talk them, who want to push them down, from black people who want to kill them, etc. They do think this way. This stuff does radicalize them. So what I'm saying is that this is a problem, and you contribute to it when you trivialize these feelings. You need to stop doing that.
I mean, I
I'm
don't
not-
feel
heard
like anybody wants to like
I feel like
trivialize the
it's on
feeling.
loop. I feel like I've heard that point 100 times. It's processed, and I'd like to quit looping on it. I hear you.
Yeah, listen, look, I mean, I think we've, I don't want to drag this on longer than we need to. Are there any other points of disagreement or issue that people want to kind of raise with one another before we start to wrap things up?
Well, I just want to bring up a point that I don't think people are permanently racist. Like, I don't, and I think as on the left, I agree with Brianna. Like, we should stop labeling people as just racist or fascist or whatever ish. It's pointless, right? These are fellow Americans who I think have fallen astray for whatever reason. So, I just want to make that point. I think it's a temporary thing, and I think sadly a lot of our fellow Americans are being manipulated, people around the world, and I'm sorry to hear about that experience, Doobie. But it's a Discord. Like, I don't know what to say, man. Like, you can say anything in a Discord. I'm not trying to belittle your experience or whatever, but just out there in the real world, like, people get along pretty damn well, you know? And I understand there's racism out there, but the majority
Yeah.
of us get along, and we should focus on that.
I do have to say, I grew up in Mississippi. I sure knew a lot of people at my high school that were part of the KKK. So I do think racists do exist in the country. But as 2024 comes up, like if you're looking for a field job, let's talk. I think my biggest problem with progressives is we don't get out there and do the real work, which is phone banking and knocking on doors. So anyone that's moving in that direction, I think you're doing the right work there, in my estimation.
I think like media algorithms are actually a really big contributor to that because you can get fed a really warped perception of reality. Just like you mentioned, libs of TikTok. I mean, when you see like this crazy trans teacher pushing some radical shit to like their students, you probably will have a very negative perception if that's all you're experiencing. Just like I'm sure a lot of progressives and Black Americans, every day they're seeing like a police officer like brutally beat up some Black person, and obviously your perception of police is going to be really skewed in that direction as well.
Okay. Listen,
I-
sorry, go on, Sick.
Oh yeah, I just want to say, we've been talking about in like the last 5 to 10 years the increase in mass shootings in this country and it being perpetrated by white people. And I know, Republicans defend the right to give people the tools to commit those mass shootings. I just want to say I have a lot of animosity towards liberals for giving those same people the motivation to do it. So.
What's the motivation that they're giving them for
Oh,
mass
wow.
shootings?
Ostracization and demonization of white people and not giving them proper outlets.
And that's
come on.
motivating them to shoot up Black supermarkets?
It's
Oh,
like
no.
blaming a woman
Oh.
for wearing a short skirt, getting
Yeah.
raped. Like, you
Yeah.
gotta give her
I'm
the
sorry.
motivation.
I'm sorry. Was that painful to hear? Like,
No,
No,
it
it
was
was
cringe.
stupid.
It was cringe.
It's the
That's what
reality.
it was.
So we can acknowledge that the feelings are stupid, that the reaction is stupid. Obviously, you shouldn't shoot people, but these feelings exist, and until you confront them and deal with them and deal with the people that feel this way, you're going to keep getting this kind of shit.
Okay, but to be fair, the people shooting up Black supermarkets aren't quoting white liberals. They're quoting people like Lawrence Southern, Nick Fuentes,
Not true.
other white
Actually not
supremacists.
true.
Those are the people that are actually pushing these
They'll
incredible
call
racial
you-
tensions
they'll call
across
you-
the country.
They'll
They-
call you
they'll-
the good
they'll
boys,
quote-
the good boys, and they'll say that you're a useful idiot for the Black agenda, or the Jewish agenda, whatever the fuck agenda they're afraid of. Right?
Wait,
Because
and I also
because
wanna-
you dismiss their feelings, because you pretend that anti-white racism isn't a big deal.
when it-
Yeah,
when a
it's because
shooter-
idiots
when a
like you
shooter
are pushing that
looping-
anti-white racism is a
We're
big
looping
deal, which
on
is
it.
not
just
true.
say- I just want to say when a shooter writes a manifesto and he quotes somebody like Ben Shapiro, you can say Ben Shapiro has harmful rhetoric. I just want to say the reason they're listening to Ben Shapiro is because nobody on the left is willing to speak to white people.
No, the reason they're doing the shooting is because something broke in their head. It has nothing to do with what other people are doing out there. Mom didn't love them. I don't know, man. Something went wrong, bro. But to blame what other people are doing is ridiculous. Are you crazy?
That's
I'm crazy enough to
Dumbest
think we
thing I've
need
ever heard.
gun safety legislation in this country. That's what I think the biggest.
well, to be
reason
super
everybody
clear, I
is.
don't think anybody should be able to own a gun unless you're a cop or military. But whatever. What I'm saying is, I think you're not dealing with reality. You say, oh, their brain's broken and that's it. No, there's more to it, right? There are plenty of people with broken brains who don't go around murdering people, right? It's
I'm happy to
go for it.
I'm happy to talk to you more about it, Doobie, for sure.
Okay, cool. Well, listen, it's been a fun panel, a fun little ad hoc thing going on. I'm going to go around one by one, just give like a quick final take, and then you can shill whatever it is you've got to shill, okay? So, Brianna, you go first.
Chud, something that's really important to me in my public life is to admit when I made mistakes. Last time we talked, You told me very directly you did not think the Hogwarts Legacy boycott was going to be effective. I said I was not quite sold on that yet, and it's later, and I just want to point out you were dead on with that. And
Okay,
I
thanks.
think if you're serious about trans rights in this country, I think it's imperative on all of us that are serious about that to look at this experience, to game plan, to adjust, and to do things differently next time. And that's a responsibility I'm taking very seriously. As far as anything I want to plug, I'm doing GDQ Games Done Quick tomorrow. I'm the second fastest Princess Peach speedrunner in the entire world at Super Mario
Nice.
2. I'm doing that at 7:10 tomorrow. I'm so excited about it. I've been practicing for 25 years, and it's all going to pay off. So,
Damn, sounds good. So, any speedrun fans, go and check that out. Thank you very much for coming on, Doobie.
Yeah, just it's a lot easier if you guys just agree with me right from the start, so we don't need to go through all this shit. I'm Doobie. I help run the politics server on Discord. Discord.gg/politics, the best and biggest politics server on the Discord platform. That's where you'll find me.
Okay, sick.
All my stuff's down there. If you go to kick.com, YouTube, whatever, / Sick Unchained, it's there. I just wanted to ask Brianna, are you running in GDQ or are you just hosting?
no, I'm
Or
a
like
runner.
like
I'm
oh, good for you.
literally the
Okay.
second fastest Princess
Go
Peach
go watch
speedrunner on
Brianna
Earth.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah, go watch Brianna run then. That's what I'll plug. That's
Okay.
awesome.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chad. Always fun. It's it's nothing but love, even if we get heated or whatever. I've known Doobie for a while, so it's all good. And Doobie, again, I'd be happy to talk to you one-on-one about it if you wanna do it now or later or whatever. It's all good. But I just want to leave with the point that I really think it's important that we don't just dismiss people as racist or fascist or whatever. And I think that's a good lesson for the left that we shouldn't just accept that. And that's why I did not like what Scott Adams said to just get away from people. I just thought that was terrible. These are fellow Americans, man. We shouldn't run from the fight. We should go towards it and say, okay, how do we fix this?
Okay, cool. And the Double Shine.
Yeah, you can find me Double Shine TV on Twitch and Twitter. And I just wanted to end this by saying that I love all white people, especially Doobie.
Hold on, I'm not white to be clear. My skin is brown. Like I
Okay.
don't give a fuck about race, but I feel like a lot of people say that to dismiss my arguments because if I'm white, it means less. Everything I said means less, right? Because you're an anti-white racist, Mr. Double Shine.
That was my closing statement. I don't appreciate you.
You're one of the good
interrupting me.
ones, definitely.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, thanks for coming on, everyone. Appreciate you coming and making content for me. Love to you all. Have a good one. Catch you later. Okay, bye-bye.
See ya.